Consider Cannabis is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment recommendations. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
I lost everybody at once. That's just the beginning of the story. That's just how it starts. My mom came back, and that's when things went dark.
It's time to consider cannabis. I'm your host, Curtis. This is the 35th episode, and I must warn you that some listeners may find the content of this episode upsetting. Those who are triggered by hearing accounts of childhood sexual abuse and other sexual traumas may wish not to listen to this episode. However, if you can handle the subject matter, I really hope you take the time to consider this all too human story. As you do, I hope you begin to ask yourself as I did, when will we as a society stop punishing those who have already endured so much? When will we demand our governing officials to actually care enough about its citizens to allow them access and use of this beneficial plant without the fear of losing the things we love? Amy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me when your first experience with cannabis was.
So I was young, around 14. It was a friend that I was walking home from school with. We had stopped on the way, and it was a cemetery, to be honest. And we sat by a tree. It was just very calming. And I remember walking home from the cemetery. You know, she went her separate way. I went home. And I was just, I've never experienced that amount of calm.
How'd you ingest it?
A joint, the, old school kind of typical way. There wasn't all those vaping devices around back then. There wasn't e-cigarettes even. So, that was the way back then. I went home and I went to sleep. And you know what? I had a really, really good sleep. I had an uninterrupted sleep, not a sleep that I woke up exhausted from actual terror. It was very nice. The problem was my grandfather didn't like it when he did end up finding me, which was, I did obviously continue this, but about 6 months after my first time, my grandpa found it, and he took me to a sheriff's station right down the street in Batavia. We lived right down the street from a sheriff's station. He took me right down there. He told me he wasn't having any of it. I can march right in there and I can go to jail because it's illegal. He wasn't having any of it. He didn't actually make me go in there, okay? I guess it was just to scare me. And it did, okay? It totally did. Because for a long time, I didn't even try to touch it again because it scared me.
Can I ask why you were living with your grandparents?
So it was just my grandpa. When I was very little, my mom and my dad divorced, and I, as a young kid, was in the middle of kind of a nasty divorce. Something I never personally wanted to do to my kids, because I knew I had been through it. It was a big thing for me. So they split up, and my dad actually started living with my grandma and my grandpa. He moved in with them until he could get on his feet. Problem was, after him and my mom split, had massive issues doing so. And for the most part, my mom disappeared. So growing up, I had my dad, my papa, which, I still have papa, and my, what I called mama, right? But she was my mom to me. So she was my mom to me. And my dad was my dad. My grandpa was my grandpa. Everything else was kind of normal. When I was in 5th grade, she got cancer. And when we found out that she got cancer, she only had a couple months. It was fast. And we found out on Christmas. I had no idea what it actually was. So she dies. And that is 5th grade. So 5th grade summer, come Father's Day, my dad killed himself. I was really numb. And I'm still really numb to it. And that's why I said I can talk about a lot of things, but it's matter-of-factly because I numb myself to it. I was already so low, and honestly, my grandma's death affected him really hard too. He was in a bad place. He didn't feel like, he was doing the best that he could. And then I know that it's in him. in a darker place than I could imagine at the time. I was in a dark place too, so it was already hard for me. I lost everybody at once. That's just the beginning of the story. That's just how it starts. My mom came back. My biological mom had to come get custody of me, and that's when things went dark. I move in with her, and my mom was married to my stepdad. He had kids. So my stepbrother was much older than me. I was 12 at the time. He was 16, 17. So for years upon years, I was raped. And the worst part about this was I was more worried about my mom's relationship with her husband than me, because I felt like it would ruin it. I mean, tear the family apart, you know what I mean? And it did. It did go on for years. The way it kind of ended, one night it was really bad, like really bad. I was bleeding and I climbed out of a window. I ran down to the library and I waited for it to open. Then I went in because my mom had taken my phone. Okay, my grandpa was giving me cell phones so that I could not only record and try to capture what was happening, because he wasn't legally my grandfather. He wasn't technically my grandfather. So he was my dad's stepdad, even though he raised him from birth. I knew him as my grandfather and nothing but when it came down to it, legally, he wasn't my grandfather. So he was having issues trying to get custody of me. We needed proof. He wanted custody of me. He wanted to take me away from this. So at this point, though, my mom had taken my phone. I didn't have one. So I went down to the library. You know, like I said, I waited for them to open. And I called my grandpa. I told him. And I was crying. And the first thing he asked was, has he been touching you? Because he had been asking, but I had been denying it. I didn't want to tell him yet. It was really weird for me. So I said yes. He said, I'm on my way. Where are you at? I said, I'm at the library. And he was there so quick. I mean, like 10 minutes. He was there. The cops were there. They brought me out. They took me to the hospital. They did a rape kit. And they went to the house and they arrested him. Now, when it came down to the court case, I had a lot of backlash from my mom. And my stepdad was threatening to leave her. They were confident that everything was consensual. They knew about it, but everything was consensual. And that I was doing this to get him in trouble, which is rough. It's a mind fuck. It makes me still to this day question myself with everything I do because of this. So she took me to court. She made me go in. And they didn't want me to have to go in and testify. They had me, something like this. I didn't know though. They had me talk to somebody in a room and they had recorded it kind of without me realizing it. And they used it for the court case. So I didn't have to be there. I didn't have to go through that. So she took me and made me watch him walk in so I could see what I was doing to him. Because before any of this happened, I mean, he was my friend, at least, so to speak. So, I felt really bad. It really messed me up. And there was a psychiatrist that told my mom that it would probably be best off for me to go live with my grandfather, and she didn't like that, so I stopped going to that psychiatrist. It was a lot of denial. So the family surrounding this, even as an adult, I was told, but it was consensual, right? Like, what do you mean? I was a kid. Still to this day, my aunts, like her sisters, truly believe that, even though I'll say I was a kid. There's no way. I was a kid.
There's no way. I love that I live in a country that says kids cannot give consent.
Yes. So I couldn't. There's no way.
I don't want to live in a country where that isn't a law.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was traumatizing, literally. So he went to Hillcrest, which I guess is a school for sex offenders, because he was right under the age of 18 at this point. If he was just a couple months older, he wouldn't have just went to jail. But, he did technically go to juvenile. But then they sent him to Hillcrest to, recover, right? Well, he got home visits. And it came down to him getting home visits or me living there. So finally, I got to live with my grandfather.
How long were you living with your grandpa before you got caught with the bag?
Not very long.
Not very long.
Yeah. And at this point, honestly, my grandfather was great. Okay, he's still great.
Can I ask you about your diagnosis?
ADHD, that was just there. That was just treated because the school I went to kind of wanted it to be treated. They kind of put me in a little van outside for special classes up until I took my ADHD medication, and then I could be inside with the rest of them. So I know that they tried many different things. For years, I would be on a different medication for a month or so. I remember, they would call it like the Prozac days because I had a really bad reaction to Prozac. I was on many medications. My anxiety, that was included. That was the same when I was diagnosed with depression. I was also diagnosed with anxiety. The PTSD was directly related to my dad and my grandma to begin with. And this started kind of psychiatrist through my grandpa's job. After all of this happened, I went there and they had diagnosed me with PTSD. So that was before the other trauma, which I think kind of qualifies for PTSD all in its own. But I did technically. I was traumatized before. I was traumatized, if that makes sense.
I mean, honestly, I think you were traumatized before that event. Yeah. You were traumatized during the time that those things happened. You were traumatized when you had to break out of a window and run to a library and wait for it to open. And you were traumatized when there were flashing lights everywhere and your family's being torn apart.
Yeah.
You were traumatized when your mom made you go back down to the courthouse and watch that proceeding. That was more trauma. You had trauma upon trauma upon trauma upon trauma.
It did get a little better. My grandpa did everything he could for me. Okay, he tried to make sure I was on the right path as much as possible. I think that's why he did the whole sheriff's situation. But also at the same time, he took me amazing places anywhere I wanted. He tried to make up for everything that I had went through. He tried to give me everything I wanted. Yeah. Problem was, because of the sexual abuse, once I got to a certain age, I didn't want to be sexually abused, but everybody wants to explore their sexuality. And I got pregnant really young. Also because, obviously, I was never given birth control. I was never even went to an OBGYN. I mean, I was in psychiatrist like crazy, but none of my female issues were ever addressed by any family, and my grandpa especially was a bit distant from any of that. But that's what happened. It happens. And as much as I don't want to make it out to be, because this, once again, it could just be coincidence, but I got pregnant at 16. I told my grandpa, and my grandpa literally had a stroke that night. He couldn't handle it at all. It was literally the night. And he lost the ability to talk. He lost the ability to walk. He was partially paralyzed. And I tried to stay in the hospital with him as much as possible. I was still pregnant. And what really sucks is he was having memory issues. It had to be told again every day that I'm pregnant. That sucks. And because he kept forgetting. The problem is, at this time, he was my guardian. I was still way, way under 18. It's not like I had a couple months. I had years. And he had knowledge of everything. I didn't know how to pay a bill. I didn't know how to pay a mortgage. He did everything. And, it's a lot of people, if I just said that little snippet, it would sound, kind of like I didn't have life experience, you know what I mean? But it's really, I had so much more going on. I never learned how to do those things. And, he did take care of it. So he had the only money. When he went in, he had money. I didn't know how to get any money. The lights got cut off. The water ended up getting cut off. And I was hungry. I was pregnant, and I was begging them. He couldn't talk. I was begging them to get the money that he had because they had taken the money from him and put it in like security. And I was begging them to just get some money out so I could eat. They told me, well, why don't you go to your parents? I said, he's my guardian. He's all I have, He tried his hardest to sign a squiggle to have the money released to me. And I got down to the cafeteria and when I was paying for the food, I actually dropped with the food in my hand and passed out. That's how bad it was getting. And when I woke up, they had all kinds of IVs in me. And I'm like, I'm pregnant. They're like, no, you're not. I'm like, no, I am. I promise you. At this point, I was like 6 months pregnant. I wasn't really showing at all. I wasn't really eating. And at this point, even child services was called. Like I'm a young teen starving myself. That's not what it was. So the hospital experience was very hard. Around the time I was ready to give birth to my first baby at 16, he was coming home from the hospital and we had to ready the house, right? A house that's totally not ready. So I got like a hospital bed and tried to like drill up, handrails and stuff. I tried. Okay. But the reality of it is shortly after he got home, our house was being sold to the sheriff's auction because nobody ever made a payment. I had no idea. I didn't know. I guess you could call it immature, but inexperienced, really, is what it was. Because I tried to save it after I found out, and the bank wouldn't even let me pay on it. So there's nothing I could do. I was under the age of 18, so it's not like we can go find a place to rent to live. It was rough. Okay. I tried my best. I got a job with my little newborn. I would have her in, her little seat in the back while I'm mopping. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to save money. Don't know where I'm going to go, Also have a grandfather that I can't even move myself, but I don't want him to go to a nursing home. Okay, that's my last. I'll do anything to make sure he doesn't go to a nursing home. That's his wish, and I'll do anything to make that happen. So I did what I could, and we ended up in Dayton. Kind of weird. Kind of fast forward a little bit, but I worked hard, and once I did turn 18, instantly became a little easier for me, and I was able to go through Simsy Klein and buy a cheap house and fixed it up, and just so I knew that we had a place.
So you did this pregnant?
Yeah, I was super pregnant throughout all of this.
Not with the same baby?
No,
but, okay.
No. So they are newborn, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Yeah, right. So, I was either pregnant or just had a baby. Either one. I wasn't in the greatest condition, to be honest. But what's really sad is I was supposed to have a procedure done that keeps getting rescheduled. Okay. And, that medical in general sucks right now. I've had issues with medical stuff besides medical marijuana. It looks really bad on me now that, I'm 25 with 5 kids, but when I've taken so many precautions and they actually won't help me, I just keep having kids.
What do you mean you've taken so many precautions?
They won't let me get my tubes tied. I keep trying to go back, and I actually had an appointment on Monday, and they called and rescheduled it again until November. And this is just a consult, they're just talking to me about it. And apparently I have to see a psychiatrist too. They're making it into a really big deal and made me have to jump through so many hoops. And typically, and yes, I do have birth control, but when I'm still getting pregnant on the birth control, I just need my tubes tied, and they won't tie my tubes. So now here I am. I have 5 kids. I'm begging, please, just take the whole thing at this point. I hate saying it, it doesn't sound great. It's not something that, I'm proud of them as my kids, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm almost embarrassed for them because I'm very young.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The stigma behind the young mother that has a bunch of kids.
Yes. And it doesn't matter if I'm working multiple jobs. It doesn't matter if I'm trying everything that I can. I'll look bad, whether I'm stay at home or working or both. Whichever one I'm doing, I'm going to look bad for not doing the opposite. I'm not going to win. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's almost like, okay, well, I'm going to look bad for something. So just pick one, and that's just what it is, because you can't make everybody happy, If one person doesn't like something and they do like something else, that other person probably doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, you just can't please everybody.
So how long has it been since your grandpa's stroke?
9 years.
How's he doing?
He hasn't recovered He's happier. He is who he is now. He's a completely different person. He can't speak the greatest. He's still partially paralyzed, although he can kind of get around better now. He can talk a little better now. Although I will say that I've noticed that all of my kids even have a stutter because of growing up and talking to him so much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they kind of stutter the way he does. And I've been asked why they do that, and I try to explain because my grandpa, he had a stroke.
So sweet.
Yeah, and they make him very happy though. Ironically, down the line. And I kind of had a feeling that might happen. Now, they're his greatest company, the kids. He's doing the best he can, but he's not recovered.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So how did he take it when you told him you were getting your medical card?
He was surprised. He was very surprised. He kind of chuckled. He asked me what for. I said, well, which diagnosis do you want? And he just chuckled, said, true, and walked away. So he was okay with it. He was totally okay with it. Mind you, he's a completely different person at this point. I will say that I have recently rekindled my relationship with my mom. All right. It's different. I will say that. But I will also say as more of an adult mother and daughter relationship. She just now met her grandkids. I was 9 months pregnant with my last one when she showed up out of nowhere at my front door wanting to meet the kids. Weird. But yes, I rekindled this relationship just a couple months ago. And mind you, I hadn't seen her since I was 18. I had my second kid at 18 and my third at 20 and my fourth at 21 or 22, and then my last one at 24. So I'm 25 and I have 5 kids. They were back to back to back to back. Before you know it, there they are. Even though I'm young, I wouldn't go back and change any of that. I'm happy with that. So yeah, she showed up just a couple months ago. And at this point, I see her maybe every other Sunday. Also, I have a step or half brother by her. So my little sister and my little brother that I didn't see for a long time. Now my sister's 16 and I keep expecting a 7-year-old to show up and she's 16. It's a recent thing. Okay. I'm happy actually to be able to talk to her as an adult, for her to meet the kids, for me to see my sister specifically. My brother's cool too. He's a little younger and so ADHD. I mean, I'm ADHD, but he's hard to have a conversation with. He's bouncing off the walls all the time. And that's fine. But me and my sister were very close. So I'm happy, to have her back.
Does your grandpa know about that?
My grandpa is very weird about that. He will not speak to her. He won't even come out of the room when she comes there. It's kind of a really awkward situation. And I feel like I don't want to disrespect him because he did so much to keep me away from her,
To keep you safe.
Yeah, to protect me. So I don't want to bring her back into my life to mess everything up or to hurt him, or you know what I mean? Like, I've thought about a lot of this, but at the same time, I've tried to tell him I don't want to be on a bad page. I want to feel better about the situation. I want some closure, so to speak.
Have you talked to your mom about saying that you've given consent? Like,
no.
You haven't readdressed any of that at all?
Mm-mm. Actually, they have brought him up in passing. Like it's normal, like nothing ever happened. It has really bothered because my husband has been there. My husband knows. And, he's a completely another character to this whole situation. But he had trouble just hearing them talk about him as a person, just in passing, like, oh, that's the store that, you and your brother would walk to, and refer to him as my brother, like nothing ever happened. He lives in New York. They haven't had any contact with him in a long time. So it's not as if they're bringing him necessarily back into my life, but the way that they talk about him in passing. And it could just be that, normalizing it is a way to get through it.
I would urge against normalizing it.
It shouldn't be normalized.
It happened, but yeah, we can't just talk about it in passing like that was good times.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not okay.
Yeah. It's really awkward. I will say that. It is probably the most awkward situation to be in. And what really sucks is you, at least I do, have the urge for normal. You know, you want normal so bad that it's almost easy to accept it because you want normal. Now, as an adult, I know that what happened was not consensual. I could never have her tell me that it was consensual and truly believe it as an adult because I know that my daughter isn't old enough to give consent. I'm at that point. So
in therapy, I've had people say things that try to downplay it or make it not.
Yeah.
And then they will backpedal and try to act like that's not what they're doing. And I really, truly believe it's the humanity of them trying to somehow come to terms with this horrible thing that happened.
Yeah.
That should not have happened. And it's just that simple. That's wrong. That should not have happened. I don't know why people feel that need to try to lessen the blow to make it easier for themselves to process.
Yes. It's almost like, you know, they don't want the trauma to hurt their own feelings. You know, they don't want to be affected by it. So they have to normalize it. And
so when I look at the statistics about like 1 in 6 men or 1 in 4 or whatever the 1 in whatever, that doesn't make it okay.
Yes, it happens a lot, but it doesn't make it okay.
Maybe it is normal. Actually, if I look at our society, maybe that's the truth. It is normal. Doesn't make it right.
Yes.
Doesn't make it okay.
Yes. I think it's crazy that, honestly, a lot of people, whether they admit to it or not, have had that issue at some point in their life. I think that it has been accepted and just kind of
honestly,
shushed.
I don't want to get too conspiracy anything, but when you look at the Jeffrey Epstein thing, all these people are supposedly connected, and then all of a sudden, in protective custody, he's dead. Nobody knows what happened, and then it just kind of disappears and goes away.
Yeah. And, you know, it's crazy that if it weren't for, like, documentaries, a lot of people would have no idea, you know. My story, even though it's really deep, I'm not going to say that it has stood out in terms of even other stories that I've heard that other people has been through. I try to be quick to understand that other people have it so much worse. You know, when it came down to getting my medical marijuana card for PTSD, I felt bad because I'm not extremely sick. I don't have cancer. Am I traumatized enough to use this as a medicine? You know what I mean? I almost felt like, you know, I was bad because other people have it worse. If that makes sense. I feel like I was able to numb myself as a child and get myself through it. And it's really rough, I will say, being an adult that is trying to heal and recover from everything. Now, as an adult, it's so much harder. But as an adult, I have to deal with it. Now I have kids. It's rough in itself now having to go back to it. So, but it has to happen at the same time. It's required to heal, right? I think it's something I'm not even close to getting through. I'm still well on my way.
What are you doing for your inner healing? What's your process?
Meditation is great when I can. Obviously, there's not a lot of peace and quiet at home, and that's just a fact of life. But when I am at work, I do get breaks, and I do try to have just even a moment of silence to process, you know, and think and heal. Medical marijuana has helped a good bit. I no longer have terrible, terrible nightmares where I'm back in that situation and I wake up from that. And it's so great. My husband, he doesn't have dreams or nightmares or anything, so he can't relate to me in this aspect to the point that I'll call 911 in my sleep. But I'm so happy that I actually think that I'm normalizing in a way, like my brain isn't experiencing as much trauma because I'm not reliving it every time I go to sleep. So that's great. I mean, honestly, I'm in 100% better mood, not being exhausted, going through everything all night. So that is probably the biggest life changer. And saving grace for me right now.
Have you used it in conjunction with meditation time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can.
'Cause
That's
some of the best like growth
Yeah.
and being able to unpack some childhood stuff and process it and put it away properly.
Yes.
Being able to like intentionally press in on those memories while medicating and in that state of meditation has been amazing.
Yes. And if it weren't for that, I probably wouldn't even be at the point that I'm at now with it, because I have grown a lot. I have worked through a good bit. I'm not there, but, will I ever be? You know what I mean? Are you ever fully recovered? Or can you judge that? Is that... I think it just gets better. It's never going to not have happened.
Yeah, it's true.
It's really working through it to be in a happier place.
Yeah, and that's the only peace that is offered you, really. You can let it continue to destroy you, or you can tackle the reality of it, find peace in that reality, and continue on. It's not like a plateau or anything. Like you don't get to walk over the horizon and see the field and get to just, oh, there it is. That's, I'm there. I'm healed. No, that's not what it looks like.
Nope. It's not going to happen like that. It's just being in a happier spot than you were yesterday. I really think that that's the important part. And the healing will come, but it's never, you can never expect to be healed completely. It's always going to be there. But like you said, if you can accept it, and not let it destroy you, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, I sometimes struggle with the idea that I need to have like the perfect day, not respond negatively or lash out or not be triggered by anything, to respond to everything perfectly and just have like a really perfectly peaceful, tranquil day. And I don't think that's reality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to force myself to achieve this goal that's never really gonna be reality in what I believe will be this life anyway.
And once you realize that, it's a lot happier to be like, okay, well, let me just be happy. Let me just feel content. I think a lot of things are about being content with yourself.
I can't even begin to describe the amount of frustration that I had after I got off the medication and was just using cannabis. The frustration of how clean it felt in my body, how clean the high or whatever felt in my body, as well as the peace that I had. And just the idea that this carries so much stigma with it, and this carries so much fear.
Yeah. It's embarrassing in a way. I want to be proud to say that I'm using a better alternative. I'm quick to try to explain to people like benefits of essential oils and terpenes. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like relate this stuff. It's really good. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to hear it.
And then you have the people who are like, oh, this isn't the dangerous THC. This is the CBD.
Yeah.
And it's just the lack of education.
Yes.
And because of the confusion of calling it marijuana, we haven't done ourselves any favors.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But then we can get into a whole nother thing. Like I just bought a strain called Poochie Love.
Yeah, I did see that.
Did you? Yeah. And I was like, that's my medicine. my medicine is called Poochie Love.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Come on.
Yeah. You're making me sound a little ridiculous.
Right. And it's like, I love puppies too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what they're talking about, but I'm going to believe they're talking about little puppies.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Poochie. Yeah, sure. But it's supposed to be taken seriously as medicine that's actually going to help you. I don't feel like some of these names are helping that cause.
Yes.
We've covered a lot, but there's another part of your story in this. Through all that, you've managed to buy a house, move to Dayton, and you're working whatever jobs you can find, pretty much.
Multiple
jobs.
Literally working as much as I can.
Yeah. And one of those jobs was one of my kids' favorite places in the whole entire world, Kings Island.
And you know what? It was my kid's favorite place too.
Yeah. Which
makes this all the harder. I was actually pregnant with my first daughter, and I was still working there.
That's when you first got the job there?
Yeah. It was actually right after I turned 16. I had to be dropped off there at first because I didn't even have my license. That's how young I was when I started working there. And you know what? This place, like, I have had a Kings Island pass since I can remember. Kings Island. I grew up at Kings Island my whole life. So this is a place that I went to not only work, make friends, make memories. This was my happy part of life. This was my escape. And they are the ones that let me go, gave me the choice to be fired or quit on Mental Health Awareness Day over having a medical marijuana card. And it wasn't about having THC in my system, because they told me even if I didn't have it in my system, that they would still have to give me the option. It wouldn't change anything because they can't accept me with a medical card. And I couldn't breathe. I tried to get out. I've been here 10 years. And the lady that I was talking to, she had a pin on that said 24 years. So it may not have been much to her. It may not have sounded like much to her. But I invested so much into it. I mean, even outside things like dance classes, acting, things that I did to better myself. And I know we all do this, That's a fact of life. You have to better yourself to get a better job. But there's not many other amusement parks around. You know what I mean? So I kind of bettered myself to be able to work in a place that now there's no other market for. And I started this journey as a teenager. So here I am as an adult, finally let go. And because I've given so much of myself to them, I have no idea what else to do in life. The job itself was my favorite thing to do, It wasn't about the money. I have 5 kids. It obviously was not about the money. It was about, this was 2 days that I could go be myself by not being myself, if that makes sense. I was in their entertainment for 10 years. I can't tell you how many different people I played.
So you were in entertainment. You were not a ride operator.
No. I was never a ride operator.
You weren't operating heavy machinery.
No. I danced. I assure you, it was fine.
Which character?
Woodstock. Everybody loved what I did. I mean, I know for a fact that when I was gone on maternity leave, so many complaints came in because my character wasn't out. And that made me feel a certain way. I felt loved and missed, and
like your work, as silly as it might seem, impacted people.
Yes. I can't imagine how many family photo albums I'm in. And you know what? In that picture, even though you can't see it, I'm totally smiling. Like, big old smile. I'm so happy. So they have to have, apparently, people over the age of 18. Escorts can be under. But like characters, there are a couple younger ones. But they prefer to have them over 18. The problem with Woodstock is they can't get anybody over 18 that's under 4'9", because you have to be under 4'9" to be in the costume, 4'9" or under. I just so happen to be 4'9", and the costume fits me like a glove. Like, it zips up perfectly. It was almost like the costume was actually designed for me, and it wasn't. Such a bummer, They wanted to post on Instagram that Woodstock is back out. For the kids, for the people that were traveling from who knows to come see Woodstock. So many people came to see Woodstock. Everybody was excited, and now I'm not there. And I would love nothing more but to make everybody happy. That was my job. That's what I did. And I was overwhelmed with happiness doing it. It is very hot.
Yeah.
It is very low visibility. And I also did the shows.
You're not claustrophobic.
No.
Because I would imagine that head beginning to be something that I would need to get away from.
So that's something that I think about on the outside. I'm like, you know what? When I'm in that, my hands are in wings. There's no way I can get out of the costume to unpin the head to get it off, even if I wanted to. And if I think about that, yeah. If I think about that, that is the hardest thing, Because when I was pregnant and I was starting to get morning sickness, I had to have the head ripped off of me at one point because I was about to throw up. And that is the worst. And heat is the worst. I mean, we have heat plans 1 through 5, all right? And at a certain point, we can't go out anymore. It's rough. You have to have an escort pin the head and then pin the costume around the head to where you can't. There's no way. And then the shows. The shows are completely different because you have to keep up like 4 choreographed songs in a row. And I loved every bit of it. It was small, it may not seem important or glamorous or whatever, but you know what? It was my piece of happiness. And I can't believe it was taken away because I'm trying to get better in other areas of life. Because I don't think anybody would really believe that I had issues, because I did try my best to be as vibrant and exciting, happy, everything that I'm actually not. I tried to be. And I personally can't believe it's gone. My nightmares have came back. And these aren't going away. I can't make these go away. And I have no idea how bad and dark this is going to get, because that was my only happy place throughout my whole life. That might make me cry. Out of everything, what's hurt the most is taking away my ability to blossom and excel, get better, I was doing really, really good. Better than I even thought I could. And they probably didn't even know the difference. And they didn't even know that I had any issues until it was too late, I tried really hard. A lot of people with certain jobs, they say, like, it's kind of like family. It's kind of like a family. That's kind of where I found mine, And now I don't even feel like I can show my face. I have tickets that I've earned, and I'm scared to even take the kids because I don't want to embarrass them, because I'm sure that everybody has heard, but I doubt anybody's heard that it was medical. I'm sure they just heard marijuana, and I don't want to embarrass myself or my kids by going back. And what really sucks is, obviously, I was on maternity leave. My kids were so excited for me to go back to work. I told them, I have to be able to go and work to earn the tickets to be able to take you, because they wanted to go. They've been waiting for this. And it's literally not a guilt trip. It's just, it sucks. It sucks so hard, because even if I wanted to, I don't know if I could go back. I couldn't face failure, ultimate failure. Even though I didn't do anything bad, I'm disappointed. And I feel like they were a part of my family, whether they knew it or not. Okay, I grew up there. And that's what they're doing with a lot of other teens there too, because they are spending their lives literally working, not at home with their family, at this place. So a lot of these supervisors and other coworkers, they're able to get very close to. And like for me, who has experienced a lot and finds it hard to get close to anybody, and I really, I have issues, and I thrived in that environment. And I'm disappointed that they're taking it away from me when I was doing so good. There's nothing that I did bad. It's not like they found weed on me or I smelled, or you know what I mean? I would understand if I did something wrong.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah. It's garbage.
Yeah, it really is. And I know that they probably thought I was the worst. And the fact that, no, I didn't operate rides, but I worked with kids. Can you believe that?
I'm using medical marijuana so I can be a better parent.
Yes.
I'm going to interact with kids to do that.
Yes. I have 5 kids. I'm pretty sure I'm okay with kids. So that's not at all a worry. I did great at my job, and I don't even want to talk myself up because, I had my issues. But I'm just saying, like, emotionally, the place I was great, and it was because of there. And now I don't know what I'm going to do. I lost, like, an identifying piece of me, I took it seriously enough for it to hurt. I did the Halloween shows. I did the Christmas shows. I was Santa Snoopy, and I was a very short Snoopy. I made Snoopy look like he had a bunch of rolls because I was so short.
That's funny.
Yeah. Actually, my uncle came to see the show, and he thought that it was a female Santa because it looked like a dress. But I'm like, no, it's just the coat was so long. It went all the way down to my feet.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So I did all the seasonal shows. And basically during the off season, whether it's between hot and Winterfest or summer, just kind of depends on how long and the depth really of the rehearsal. Sometimes I won't say it lasts the whole off season, but sometimes it does. It just kind of depends. on the show. And I will say that, like, being Woodstock and being the show character are two completely different things. Okay, one has memorized dance moves and has to run up and down stairs and is much more physical. The other one just stands there and takes pictures. So two very different things. Although with Woodstock, I'm not going to lie, you know, Rockin' Robin comes on all the time in Planet Snoopy. Woodstock's personal favorite song.
Right.
You know, so Woodstock did some little shows of his own. I tried to make so many people happy. I can't tell you how many adults came there thrilled to see the majestic Woodstock, you know, that's never out because I'm never here, you know, I mean, and there was an issue I had with an older boy. Now, you know everything I just told you, okay? This kid, Woodstock made him excited, man. Woodstock made him excited. And he would play with himself, man. Yeah, and he would hump me and stuff. This was a real big issue.
At Kings Island?
At Kings Island in Planet Snoopy.
How old was this kid?
Maybe 16.
16?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was so tall. I almost had to break my neck to look up and see what he looked like.
Developmental disabilities?
Yeah. But the thing is, the parents weren't there. So my manager wouldn't say anything. You know, he didn't want to overstep because his parents weren't ever with him when he came up to me. Were they at the park? I don't know. But they weren't with him. And he said that, you know, the kid's just excited. That's what happens when the kid gets excited. And, you know, I shouldn't take it in any other way. And I understand that. I do. And I didn't want to take it it was hilarious the first couple times. Okay, I couldn't believe it because I'm like, I'm a bird. What's sexual about a bird? But it kept going. It kept going to the point that it was every Sunday, every single Sunday. And my boss wouldn't do anything, would not say anything, wouldn't. He even took the costume away from me one day for telling him, like it was my fault. Okay, like I didn't want that to happen. I looked at him so many times and told him, I'm sorry. I love this costume. I love being Woodstock. I don't want this to happen, you know. So, but it did feel like it was all my fault. And the last day that I was there, I seen him for the first time face to face. And I was walking out and I seen him, you know, he was just walking. He had no idea. I figured, you know, I'm fired already. It doesn't really matter. And I looked at him and I said, Woodstock's not going to be out today. Nobody will say anything to him. Nobody will stop him. You know what I mean? And I will say that gave me a little bit of peace. You know, like, it's not going to be out today. You can't do that to me today. You know, I get that it wasn't what it was. You know what I mean? Because he did have some issues. But at the same time, it was Kings Island's fault for not doing anything, for not stopping it, because they do preach sexual harassment, you know, whether it's by customers or in the workplace, other employees, you know, they preach that a lot, like they care, and they don't, because when it comes down to it, they won't get involved. I don't blame him for doing it. I blame the parents for not being there and stopping it.
Yeah, okay, so as a parent of a kid with disabilities, developmental disabilities, I want to give him some freedoms and some independence. I need to know if stuff like that happened, like the first time. Because if it's been happening and continues to happen and it hasn't been corrected, it's going to be so much harder to correct that type of behavior.
Yeah.
Like it needs to be nipped in the bud.
Yeah. And I will say that he was totally mature enough to walk around and ride rides and do stuff like that on his own. He was. But I'm sure that his parents didn't know about these incidents. And like during Winterfest, it got kind of bad. Winterfest last year, because he had his coat on, but you could, when he was in line, like coming up to me, he's in line with other kids and you can see him, like, you know, he had it out. And this is in Planet Snoopy, surrounded by kids.
Not cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not cool.
That's what really got me about it. It wasn't laughable, but I wasn't offended, if you know what I mean. I didn't blame him.
No, but people like us are now going to be hypersensitive to things that other people apparently don't give an F about. And like we have to be that voice because apparently no one else is that voice.
Yeah.
I would have said something had I seen that happening at Kings Island. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if I could have walked away with not saying something.
Yeah.
So it's concerning when people don't say anything, but again,
it's a bystander thing. Yeah. I seen this thing, apparently like back in the day, people would just watch horrible things happen and would not do nothing because it was a societal norm to mind your own business. So they were doing, in their opinion, the right thing, even though you could totally stop it. And the idea that, okay, well, somebody else will stop it. Like if you see a car burning on the side of the highway and you're like, oh no, I don't have to call 911. I'm sure there's a million other people. Somebody else called 911. What if everybody thought that and nobody called 911? You know what I mean? I think it's similar to that. And once again, I don't blame him. I blame all the circumstances surrounding it because I feel like there's many times that this could have been kind of nipped in the bud and he could have been taught a better way to handle this feeling, excitement, or whatever. And now he doesn't have that. Now he doesn't have those tools, Yeah. So that's worrisome, because that was an opportunity for that kid to learn and grow and learn how to get something under control, and everybody ignored it.
It's behavior that needs to be corrected.
Yes. And that was, my main point. And, they ignored it. And at the end of the day, I'm wrong for using medical marijuana. This is something I've dealt with this whole time as gracefully as I can, And for the record, I love Kings Island. I do. I don't regret working there. I kind of regret giving them my all for so many years and not exploring other avenues. Kind of putting all my eggs in one basket and just someday have a really good job there. That's what I thought was going to happen. And I thought I was well on my way. And I thought I was in a good place in life.
And you didn't have any other interpersonal problems with people at Kings Island during the time?
A lot of people don't get along. It's very cliquey. But at the same time, like I said, because a lot of my managers used to be the people, my coworkers, 10 years ago, I did have a benefit in that way. But at the same time, it was rough working with a lot of way younger kids. It actually made me feel like, why do I still have a teenager job? You know what I mean? I have too many kids to still be doing this. I was already getting to that point, and I was slightly embarrassed, but also proud at what it was that I did. Because I found it amazing that, I can have 5 kids and still get out there and somehow do this. But at the same time, I don't know how I get out of bed most days. You know what I mean? So it's a big thing. I was going on stage in front of so many people. It's a huge deal. And I just don't think people realized what I was coming from. And, you say, a lot of people say that, you don't know what people are going through. Always be nice to people because you can't imagine it could be their worst day of their life. And nobody knew. I didn't tell anybody. So, I was, for the most part, quiet. I didn't get into a lot of conflicts. And for the most part, a lot of my friends turned out to be my manager 10 years later. So I was in a really good spot. I don't understand what went wrong, what I did to make them give me the ultimatum.
It was just all of a sudden time for a drug test.
Yeah. I just got my card. So all of a sudden.
How long ago did you get your card before the drug test?
2 months.
Have you been talking about it at work at all, or?
That would be the last thing that I would do. I do know that Kings Island does drug test some employees, mainly ride operators. However, I was never drug tested. It's not something that I worried about, but also I wasn't going to make myself get in a position to get me drug tested. And I told them I wasn't going to take the drug test and I wasn't going to waste the time, the resources. It's going to be positive. And she's like, well, if it's negative, I'm like, it's not going to be negative. It's going to be positive, But, and she's like, well, even if it is negative, if you have your card, you can't work for us. So it's not like I was given a choice. It's not like they said, okay, well, you need to start a different treatment plan to be able to continue your job since you've been here for 10 years, your whole working life, It's going to be rough recovering from it. It's going to be rough trying to find somewhere else. And there's not many amusement parks around.
So what do you think you're going to do?
I don't know.
Yeah, just kind of odd jobs, be the primary care parent and...
Yep. And now I have been on the search for other character jobs, given my height, and I have experience. But for whatever reason, I'm a really good height to be a character. If only I lived in Florida, I would be doing great. I would have jobs out the wazoo. I could be anything. But I'm in Ohio, and the entertainment industry is very slim.
Have you thought about moving? I mean, plenty of people move for work.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest reasons people migrate.
That is very true. I would actually love to. I would love to. It would be a major risk, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities for the future. I do have high hopes.
I never saw myself in Ohio.
And, it's a really weird, random place to end up. And I just hope that I might end up in a more well-known place that people like a little better. Nobody likes Ohio. It's rough. I've been here my whole life. I want a palm tree so bad. You can't imagine how bad I want the sunny and the beach. I want to smell an ocean. I want all of that. And it's really weird that, of course, I was born in Ohio. And I'm here. And yes, it is so difficult to move. Do I want to, though? Oh, yeah. I hate Ohio.
I think you should, at some point in your life, move to where your soul's drawing you towards that beach, palm tree area. That's where you need to go for sure. Well, I think that's why a lot of people end up moving to Florida in their older years. Yeah. They're like, F this, I'm finally doing it.
Yeah. And you know what? There's no problem with that.
No.
Because you know what? I'll be 40. My kids will be grown. And I'll be I'm heading out to Florida. Come see me, Mm-hmm. I don't even mind. I'm going to be a pretty young old person.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking this time. Do you have anything you'd like to say to our guests considering cannabis?
Definitely consider it. It's not what you think.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
It is disturbing to me the way so many rich and powerful people were connected to Jeffrey Epstein. It is even more concerning to me the way our society has let Epstein's case die with him. What is hard for me to bear, though, is knowing that stories of childhood sexual abuse are still occurring in America today. People are trying to heal from their past while being handed pills that will cause them to become addicted and will alter their brain chemistry, and for some, even cause more damage. Yet this cannabis plant that has helped me, Amy, and people like us reach a place of acceptance of our traumatic reality is stigmatized to the point where we may have to choose to go after the medicine that works or the job that brings them life. This should not be.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time as we consider cannabis together.